Hi, welcome to the Cybersecurity Insider. My name is Igal Behar. Today we have a new guest, a new member, and I would like to bring him in. Oh, he got disconnected. Device not connected. Okay. Oh, he's back. Oh, you're back. Okay. So let me present Steve. Steve, you are officially online and officially a member. Please tell the viewers who are you and what's going on.
All right. Thank you, Miguel. I'm Steve Magnani. I have 33 years at Citigroup. I formerly ran governance for the Global Information Security Group programs, including multi-factor authentication, suspicious activity detection, vulnerability assessment management. I was also involved in asset management as well, amongst many other things in between, you can imagine. And I'm currently acting as a consultant for a corporation on the East Coast here in the United States with regard to their third-party vendor supplier management program. Anything else
Okay.
you'd like to know?
Anything that you want to tell?
Well, I think, I'm joining forces with Yigal and TwoSecure in order to bring forward my knowledge and my experience to facilitate, the initiative to bring light and education and awareness to small to medium-sized businesses to get a security assessment completed, because there isn't any business, unless it's a charity business, I suppose, but even they would be hit too, that
Right.
is not susceptible to being hacked, and most specifically these days being data breached with the ransomware uh, connotation attached to that. It can be quite costly, and the effort and the cost to ensure that you have the appropriate controls and protections against that happening to you is a drop in the bucket compared to what it will cost you if you should unfortunately be hit by ransomware.
Okay. Perfect. Okay. So we may have another our honored guest or our Seth Meldenez. He might join us. Who knows? He's a little bit busy, got occupied with customers or something else. And by way, happy Thanksgiving, everybody, and welcome to the weekend. Um, it's windy. It was a little bit sunny here, but that's okay. Okay, so let's start. As you said about cybersecurity, vulnerabilities, and everything else. And let's talk about this thing. And this is with the Sky routers patch 17 months after vulnerability disclosure. Sky Broadband has rolled out a fix for critical DNS rebinding vulnerability affecting 6 million Sky routers in the UK. The flaw could be exploited to access the router's home network, change router configuration, and traverse the network to access other devices. The flaw was first disclosed to Sky in May 2020 and was initially said to be mitigated by November 2020. Sky says that as of October 22nd, 2021, 99% of affected routers have received the update. What do you say, Steve?
Uh, I don't believe in a lot of the statistics that are published with regard to especially patching statistics. Um, so I would take that with a grain of salt. And if you have or operate in this particular type of networking capability, I would certainly look into it and make sure that you have the appropriate patching completed.
Well, typically in big networks and enterprises, it takes a long time, even after disclosure, to come and install those patches because it might be other dependencies in those patches. And this is what we typically say to our customers. Yes, there are patches. You
Mhm.
should install them. But sometimes when install a patch, it's going to cause service disruption. Now, so I would say it's better to have service disruption than having your system exposed to a cyber attack or to data leakage. What do you say? Is it better to not to be exposed to a cyber attack, to data leak, or should they patch? And if they patch, they will have service disruption and whatever. What's
Well,
your
this
take?
is, yeah, I mean, this is a perfect, this question is a perfect microcosm of the issue with owners of small and medium-sized companies deciding whether or not they want to spend the money to do the right thing from a cybersecurity perspective.
Well,
So,
this is different. If you want to spend the money and not spending the money, this is a different question.
no, no, I know. But what I'm saying is it's parallel. You know, it's an example, the
Okay.
same mindset, right? So if I'm, you know, the owner of a, let's say, $200 million revenue perspective annual company, and I'm going to, you know, my CTO tells me I got to put in a patch or two, and they find that when they put it in, it is going to cause a 15% hit on revenue, right? For a short period of time, let's say a month, until they can figure out the kinks and then work it out. That might be a problem for some people. And see that, so that's the rub. You know, at what point do you say, listen, I'm willing to take less revenue in order to make sure that I have the protection? Um, so that's, you know, that's the problem. In a much larger organization, such as the one that I was with, and many organizations of those kinds, the big issue there is knowing your asset um, map. You know, if you don't know, if you don't have a good idea of your asset topology, right, whether you're national or global, then very often, um, you know, it's kind of like just sticking your finger up in the wind when you put a patch out to see whether or not something is going to fall. And that's because many of these companies that have grown through acquisitions over time and have just kind of like lathered systems on top of other systems and haven't appropriately integrated everything, um, now need to you know, now need to have um, a sanity check into whether or not, you know, am I going to take the risk of doing a patch because I don't know what it's going to affect. And that's why they do it in test mode over the weekend. And, you know, if they see that it's not going to affect too many systems or hopefully affect none, then they'll let it go. But if they see it's going to be a problem, they're willing to accept the risk.
So let's go back. So we had one is the business owner if they have the money, the budget to spend, but then and this is a different discussion. That the second discussion is whether you patch or not patch. Because if you're gonna patch and you're gonna be down because there is a conflict in the software where you install those patches, and that system will become unavailable, which is an issue.
Mhm.
It's a security issue, although it's not so severe as um, being breached. And typically, what I say to customers is sometimes it's better to be safe, meaning not to be breached, to be down because you install a patch and not being breached. And it's kind of a little bit twisted. It's got thinking about being Exactly the opposite thought process here.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, I mean, you want to be there, right? You want to be at the point where you're as safe as possible from any data breaches. Um, and the problem is that when you're in business, a lot of businesses are operating on not the largest revenue margins, and anything that could impact revenue could hurt, the business. So
Right.
you got to weigh it out.
Right. Which brings exactly to the same point now of service availability. And this is with Tesla. Server problems lock some Tesla owners out of their vehicles. On Friday, November 19th, Tesla owners around the world reported being unable to communicate with their vehicles using the Tesla app. For some Tesla owners, the app is their only method of unlocking their vehicles. Elon Musk said the problem was due to accidentally increased visibility of network traffic. So, verbosity. I guess they were trying to troubleshoot an issue, something, and they did some troubleshooting, and maybe they forgot to turn off that extra information about the traffic, and it caused some sort of denial of service, if you will. Which brings me, all the cars that we use these days, everything is, press a button and then, but with this car, so I have this key that you can open the car. Personally, I don't like all those things, apps and software that can, you know, put you out of business. And you need to have some sort of a backup here in case something goes wrong. Well, what's your take here?
Um, can you restate? I'm not following what the question is.
So it's not a question. It's like, again, it's like here, with all those EV electric vehicles and everything that goes on with cloud and apps and everything is okay. We switch all over the place to apps and using more and more our phones,
Yeah,
right? The smartphones to do our daily routine, including locking our cars.
yeah. You're talking about IoT.
Yes, and IoT, yes. Uh, Eventually we're going to need to have some sort of a backup, and they didn't think about the backup, and this is one of the issues here that we are having with those new technologies, that we need to have some sort of a backup even to our car. And let's say, even let's say you have, let's say they didn't have this issue. Let's say you have a problem with your smartphone.
Mhm.
Your smartphone, one of the common issues can be that you ran out of battery
Mhm.
and it's not functioning. Or maybe the phone is not functioning for whatever reason, and maybe there's no internet at that location. So what do you do? How you gonna lock and unlock your car, or you start your car? How
Yeah.
can you do that?
Uh, I mean, most of those systems only have one primary system. You know, um, uh, all the things that we operate in our homes, um, if it's digital, there really is no backup. If it gets breached or if it fails to work, there is no backup. Um,
You're
you know,
screwed.
yes.
Yes.
I mean, if a major organization like Tesla operates a network that services all of its automobiles in one shape, form, or another, and they're doing some testing or analytics or whatever that could potentially bring that primary system down or impact performance, yeah, it's their responsibility to understand what would be the impact and how can we ensure to maintain the integrity of the service in case our primary gets impacted.
Right. Yes. Okay. So with that, we are moving to our next. Uh, with that, and FBI flash alert: FatPipe. 0-day is being actively exploited. So FatPipe is a box that it's used to connect few internet connections and make it a fat pipe, meaning, okay.
Mhm.
So the FBI has issued a flash alert warning of an actively exploited 0-day on FatPipe Wrap MPVPN and IP VPN software. An unknown threat actor has been exploiting the flaw in the FatPipe MP VPN networking devices since May 2021. So it's relatively new, you can say. The vulnerability allows the attacker to obtain a foothold and maintain a persistent presence in targeted systems. According to the TLP White Alert, the vulnerability allowed APT actors to gain access to an unrestricted file upload function to drop a web shell. So web shell is like, if you will, like you have a system with a shell. This is called the web shell. So you do it over the internet on a web server for exploitation activity with root access, which you have full access, leading to elevated privileges and a potential follow-on activity, meaning installing other malware, other expanding your foothold in a system, in a network, and then expanding to other areas in that target. So this is again goes well with the topic of patching, and it's maybe better to patch than not to patch. What's your take?
Well, like I said earlier, Yigal, I mean, you always want to be as 100% patched as possible, right? The only reason why you're not going to be at that level is because you have some issues in your system that you're not quite sure of. You don't know what impact it could have on the balance of the um, on the balance of your systems, whether or not it's going to impact performance of customers. That's a big deal to businesses. So, yes, I mean, the goal is to be 100% patch. Uh, the the difference is, you know, can you actually get there without significantly impacting your business operation?
Yeah, so both ways you have a problem with operation, right? The case where you are being breached, and the second, because if you're breached, you can't serve your customers
Mhm.
and you can't do any internal activity. And the second is if you are not breached, you are patched, but you have a problem with the service availability. So now you have a problem with your customer. So either way, you're going to have a problem with your customer. And people will come and ask questions. And then with a worst case, and maybe I don't say the worst case scenario, is where you breached and information was leaked. Then you have a problem with your customers that they might go away, but then you have a problem with the authorities as well. I mean, both
Yes,
ways you might have a problem with the authorities, but this case you'll have a bigger problem
right. So,
and costs.
yeah. So, if you can live with a performance hit, if you can live with some of the chirping that you're going to get from your customer base as a result of putting in a patch, it's always best to try to live through that rather than live in a scenario where you're open to a breach. And if you get breached, the customer will not be happy, nevertheless, and it's going to cost you even more money that way.
I think there is another alternative, and the alternative is to have another system that is exactly the same as your production environment. Typically, I had this week another conversation with another development company that we are hosting their services, and I told them, well, first you need to have three separate networks. One is the development, the testing environment, and the production environment.
Mhm.
Now, in the beginning, you develop, you test, and you do everything on one environment, which is bad. But this is when you are very small. Now, when you get a little bit bigger, things are becoming more complicated, but then you understand that you have a security problem also. So then you separate it. You say, okay, I'm going to have a production environment, and then I'll have another environment, which will be the test and the dev environments, right? But that also you have a problem. Now, it might be better to have two production environments, okay?
Hmm.
And they are exactly the same. So let's say you need to install patches. You install one patch on system, you turn off the other system, you switch between the two, right? You patch whatever you need to be patched, but still you don't lose any access. It's still
Hmm.
available, but still you are maintaining uh, a good level of patching. And at the same time, you have availability. So you're not losing availability. I think this is probably but this is also adding more headaches in terms of operations and cost.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you that major organizations don't have the appropriate testing platforms themselves. I
Yes.
mean, when next generation architecture became a reality in the early, starting in 2011 and 12, all of the APIs and the services that they were developing, there wasn't a unique testing environment to test those. They just used the same testing environment, and it wasn't appropriate. Um,
Meaning
and
using the production as a testing environment.
well,
Or no, or they had the separate those functions, the production and the testing
yeah,
and dev. Okay.
yes, they are indeed separate, but there are running some of the programs that I had raised the fact that even my programs, right, suspicious activity detection and multi-factor joined together, we could not actually effectively test the protections that these provided, right, in a pure test environment to make sure end to end was working exactly as we wanted it to. I mean, it was, but we couldn't document it in the way of a test, right? And a lot of that has to do with the fact that it's internet and it's customer bound, and you need to have credentials to be able to test it. And it was just very difficult to create fake credentials to utilize in that environment, in the production environment. I mean, we really needed a test environment that was just like production, and and you know attempt customer debit and credit transactions, with the controls that we had in place. Um, that's not to say it wasn't working; it was working, but we couldn't, put on a platter to the regulators. We did this 88 ways to Sunday in a true test production environment, and it works as advertised. Um, the other environment that most of the large organizations have is a proxy environment. Um, so that's another one, and that's interesting because the proxy environment never got tested. We never tested the proxy environment.
And why is that?
I have no idea. It was just seen. I think because it was very low on the totem pole. Because proxy was essentially production, right? Um, so if it passed production, it was fine. And then obviously later on, WAF and post production control um, tools came out to sort of put additional controls and fail safes on potential vulnerabilities that were rolled out into production that were not caught by various penetration testing and threat analysis and so forth and so on.
So when you say they didn't test, what kind of testing are you referring to?
Oh, mainly, vulnerability testing.
So
Red team.
So they skipped the vulnerability testing of the proxy. They didn't test vulnerabilities
Yeah,
in the.
no, they didn't test the proxy because the proxy was basically just, you know, the delivery of the production system just through uh, a different pipe, so to speak.
I
Um,
see.
there was no difference in the functionality or the code or anything that was being delivered or being deployed on those landing pages.
I see. Okay. Okay. So we're gonna move now to guess what? Another breach on GoDaddy. So GoDaddy managed WordPress customer data was exposed in a November 22nd filing by the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC. GoDaddy disclosed unauthorized third-party access to its managed WordPress hosting environment. The intruder used a compromised password to gain access to GoDaddy systems in early September. So this has happened in September. So now November, we're talking about 3 months. GoDaddy detected the problem on November 17th again. So you see that there is an issue with detection. The incident exposed up to 1.2 million users' email addresses and subscriber numbers. The admin password originally used to provision the subscriber WordPress instance, SFTP usernames and passwords, in some cases, SSL private keys were also exposed. So there's no, the SSL certificate is meaningless. The account has been changed, password reset, SSL keys reprovisioned, and impacted users are being notified. So this is what they did. They did password changes, resets. They redid the SSL certificates keys. So revoking the certificates and creating new certificates. But this is a problem. It's a bigger problem because um, they use this maybe default admin password, and now when you create those instances, they people don't change the default password. So once they got the password, they don't change it, and this is a bigger problem. Not changing the configuration or changing the defaults. This is probably uh, one of the bigger issues here. So it's not to say there is a zero day here. It's a problem with configuration issue. Did you see those kind of things in your previous places? Configuration issues,
Um,
misconfiguration, I would say.
uh, well, I wasn't necessarily privy to the network scenarios where that would normally happen, right? Your configurations on your proxy servers, your production servers, on your DMZ, so forth and so on. Um, we certainly had them, and every organization will have them. Configuration is the biggest problem because in the world of cloud, um, you know, it's you have a dashboard that is so wide um, and so intricate. You must ensure that your configuration settings are right on in order to ensure that you don't have any data leakage or any potential breaches. Um, the type of breaches that I was more or less exposed to were the coding breaches in the applications. But you know, NIST and all the other frameworks certainly speak to the importance of configuration settings. The fact that you know your configuration setting scripts need to be part of your backup script, right? Which should always be kept offsite as well, because you don't want to lose your actual primary source holding the only copy of your recovery scripts. So yeah, configuration is a big problem, and one of the reasons why it's a big problem is because there aren't enough technical folks around to really fill that role, which is so needed for so many different companies. You know, we're doing an assessment of a small manufacturing company, and you know, because they're small, they have a very, very difficult time meeting many of the, you know, NIST 853 requirements that we're using. We're using that particular framework. So yeah, that's just another, you know, branch of the technology tree that needs to have appropriate attention in order to ensure that you've got good controls.
Yes, and also related to previously, when you said, okay, you need to know if you're globally located. If, I mean, these days, because the internet, you are, although you have one physical location, you can be considered as global because
Mm-hmm.
anybody can access and get
Right.
services from you. The other problem that I see is, well, again, it's a lot of enormous amounts of information are being created. The data is growing very big. You have multi-access from different places to the data. So now you need to know where is the data located. You need to know where the data is being stored in order to know how to protect it.
Right.
And you don't have data visibility. So this is also another issue. So here again, when as a company like GoDaddy that serves other customers, if they have some sort of an issue with how the process, and obviously it's a process issue, um, they need to force their customers to change password once they do the first login and force them to use two-factor authentication immediately out of the box. I mean, Microsoft have rolled it out at any time that you create a new account, it will force you to create um, two-factor authentication setting. So it's been done. It's going to take some time. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And yeah, okay. So I think we are earlier than I thought going to be. So any closing you want to say before
Uh,
we finish?
sure. You know, I'm happy to be part of the team, help out, and drive the message forward. I think there are a lot of small to medium-sized business owners who um, they don't they don't really have um, security uppermost in their mind, and I know that they're deploying CTOs or so-called CTOs in their organizations to run their networks, um, and they know because they're operating and they're saying, well, you know, I know that this is a hole. I know that, you know, privileged access, we cannot be using default passwords and so forth and so on. It's the message has to be delivered to the owners, and the owners have to understand almost um, kind of like see the scenario if something should go bad, to really understand how bad it can get, and then understand that, you know, cybersecurity controls, just like life insurance or automobile insurance or anything, it is an insurance to at least minimize, to a certain extent, the depth and length in which you could be hurt, and hopefully, you know, cut it down to a very, very small percentage.
So I want to tell you, well, I have a few stories under my belt with speaking to business owners. And now recently I'm talking to another business owner again that we spoke a few years ago. And it's a retail business. They have, I think, 7 stores. And a few years ago, she was referred to me by another third party, and she asked me also about, okay, if I want to check my security, what will be the cost? And I told her the cost, and she ran away. And now the second time she's coming, and now again she's asking the same third party, okay, do you know anybody? Obviously, she forgot about me. And again, he told her, well, you should talk to Igal. And I had a conversation with her, I think like 2 weeks ago,
Mhm.
and asked her, okay, what do you need? Well, what's on your mind? She said, well, I need a cybersecurity audit. I said, okay, what that cybersecurity audit will look like? Oh, the company that handles my IT, they told me that everything is okay, and we do backups, and they do a few times backup a day. I said, okay, what else? She said, well, all the employees are trained now to open suspicious emails and know to, hover above the email and see who's the email, who's the sender, and so forth. I said, okay, what else? That's it, basically. I said, okay, so, and then she got busy. She had to handle another crisis. She had a problem. I had to go. Um, but again, from this conversation, you see that business owners don't understand what really have changed. They they only care about, I don't know if they only care about the expense that will incur doing a, a proper cybersecurity, I would say. And they think it's just, okay, few things we need to check. And if those are okay, we can move on. So let's say you need to advise a business owner, what will be the first step in kind of this scenario? They never done anything about security. They have firewall, they have Fortinet, FortiGate, I don't know, they have whatever. It doesn't matter the name right now. They probably have some sort of antivirus solution somewhere on the workstations. They have servers on prem, yes, they have all these stores, whatever. What would be your recommendation to them how to get started? What would be the first step for them?
Um, well, the first step has to be to document everything that they have, right? Uh, Provide a statement about what does the business do, how does it do it, in what environment does it do it? What is it currently utilizing in order to provide those services or products, right? Provide any kind of written information in terms of scripts, policies, standards, procedures, anything in terms of how do they do what they do today, right? Because you're going to need that as the assessor, as a baseline to really uh, understand that first going in, so you have a better understanding of the environment in which you're going to assess.
I'm assuming that they don't have anything because
They have,
those business owners, they don't have this kind of documentation as you just they are not like Citibank. They are not like all
yeah,
those
yeah, yeah.
places
No,
where
I
they
got
have all those procedures. They don't have those things.
yeah.
So
So hopefully at least they will give you a list of the equipment and the versions of the software and the versions of the infrastructure that they're using, right? So you can go in know whether or not they are really behind the eight ball in terms of the versions that they're using, understanding what kind of uh, you know publicly available information is out there regarding the vulnerabilities for those older versions. And then the first thing you've got to do is, you've got to run a scan of their code and see what's going on with their code if they have any kind of code. If they're customer facing, it's a completely different ballgame. It's much more, it's much deeper. If it's not, and they're just running numbers internally and inventory and certain stuff like that, then you want to look at that. Then you need to look at their operation. Who has access to what, right? And under what circumstances can they gain the access? Is it direct? Is it within the firewall? Can they get access from outside the firewall? If that's the case, what are the controls for external access? Do they have a VPN set up? Do they have some kind of a VDI set up?
they have a VPN. Yes, they do. They
Yeah.
do have a VPN. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, may be a VPN that has some issues, so you need to kick the tires on that. And then from there, obviously you need to scan the servers. Um, if they run a DMZ, you run some testing in that area.
Okay, let me ask you, because you're touching one thing that so when you hear a cyber audit, cybersecurity audit, what do you understand that a cybersecurity audit means?
It is an audit of your of your technology, as well as the human interface with that technology, as well as actually also any third party, um, and as a result, end parties that could be breached, that could impact either your direct vendor or you directly.
Okay, and what is a risk assessment? Well, when somebody will tell you, okay, I need the risk assessment. Well, what will be your understanding of risk assessment? Is risk assessment is you say who has access to do like vulnerability scanning, checking the DMZs, or we want to just audit the technology, humans, third party.
Yeah. So the risk assessment
Is risk assessment includes everything that you just mentioned, or this is a cybersecurity audit?
well, the word cyber has been
Leave the cyber out of the picture. So
okay.
let's say you say audit or
Right.
you say risk assessment. Are they the same or they are different?
No, they're different.
They're different. So if because what you said in the first step was who has access to and where's the data and do some vulnerability scanning, I'm assuming you said, and you said check the DMZ. If
Yeah.
this is considered to be risk assessment,
No, no. That's like that's a cyber. That's an assessment of what is a fact, right? What in fact is going on. The risk assessment is ultimately a statement based upon what you have found for future risks or future attacks based
well, it
on
can
the
be
whole.
current and future attacks.
Right.
Well, okay. I think there is a lot of confusion, and let me tell you what my experience is and what I see.
Mhm.
So when people say that they want to know, they say penetration testing, but actually they mean vulnerability assessment. And when you ask them what is vulnerability assessment, they say it's something else. So I want to explain it just a little bit better, maybe my perspective, because it's not exactly understood. Risk assessment is again coming and say, okay, what do I have? What kind of processes I have? Where is the data? Who has access to? What kind of endpoint protection I have? Vulnerability scanning to see if there are any kind of, you know, low hanging fruit, including the DMZ, which is
Mhm.
part of the risk assessment, and see where is the risk, where are those vulnerabilities are. Not to say that those vulnerabilities will be exploited. They are just vulnerabilities, list of vulnerabilities, a list of weak points in my environments, in
Right.
my business. Okay. And audit, as I see it, as audit is just okay, I have a list of things and I check the mark. I have a backup, yes. I did a restore, yes.
Mhm.
I did patches, yes. I have antivirus solution, yes. Is it
Yeah.
updated? Yes. Da 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 da. Those are also part of a risk assessment, but they are more condensed and they are very small, meaning you're going to check certain things. You have a checklist. Not to say that in risk assessment you don't have a checklist, you do. But an audit is inside the risk assessment because the risk assessment is more wide. The scope is wider, very wide, because you're checking a lot of things. And audit is very small. Now, another word about vulnerability assessment and penetration testing. So, again, as I said earlier, vulnerability is just give me all the list of vulnerabilities, all available vulnerabilities. Penetration testing is a second step after the vulnerabilities assessment. You can say, okay, from all those vulnerabilities, what would be the most promising or exploitable vulnerabilities? Now you take all those the list that you created from the previous exercise, and now actively you're going to use them in order to penetrate a given system. And a penetration is extracting information, causing a problem with a given system, doing something malicious with that system. And I think people don't understand what it means and the differences between. And some people that are already in the business don't understand, including myself, because this is requires more conversations in order to understand exactly what it means. So when you say cybersecurity audit, what exactly it means? When you do risk assessment, what do you want to see? And specifically, what are the outcomes? You need to look at the outcomes. And this is I think the most important thing. What are the outcomes when it comes to any kind of activity from a business perspective? What I'm looking to get from here.
Yeah. So really, what you're talking about is it's a two-stage scenario. The risk assessment will determine what vulnerabilities you have, as a matter of fact, in your system. Then you utilize threat assessment techniques, right, in order to create uh, the tactical attacks that the bad guys are going to use in order to actually effectively utilize those vulnerabilities to attack your system. I think that's what you're referring to.
I think there is a lot of terms and jargon words that are being used all over the place in our industry, and not necessarily that people understand what they mean. And it requires more digging in order to understand what it means. Because now you said threat assessment. What is a threat assessment? Are you talking about current threats, future threats, and how you're going to do those? And maybe a threat assessment is already including in a risk assessment. So
No,
it's a subset of a risk assessment.
no, no,
No,
no,
it's not.
no,
Okay.
no.
So how a threat assessment fits into the risk assessment? Both
So
of them are assessments.
yeah, right. So you tested your systems and you found certain CVVS rated
You
vulnerabilities.
find vulnerabilities, not to say that
Right.
CVSS are exactly the best way how to look at threats.
CWE, whatever. How whatever measures you want to use to determine whether or not they're high, medium, and low, uh,
Okay.
or critical priority, high, medium, and low, which is what my former organization used
Right.
as a benchmark. Uh,
Right.
Obviously, you're not going to waste your time on low risk vulnerabilities, but you're going to take medium and higher, right? And then you're going to look at how the human element interfaces with your technology, right? And you're through the threat assessment, you're going to develop um, different strategies that the bad guys are going to be able to determine are viable paths in order to create and develop an attack on your system. And it could be for anything. It doesn't mean that they're going to actually breach you. It could be just all they want to do is harvest a good pair of usernames and passwords. That's all. Um, but but the threat assessment is utilizing the understanding of the current vulnerabilities, the environment in which your infrastructure is set up and the controls that are associated to it, and how the human element actually interfaces with that. And then you work with your fraud people if you're a big enough organization that you have that, or you bring in a separate fraud group to also facilitate those those ways in which the bad guys could potentially be coming in and do an attack. And you would test it. You would try a couple of them and say, hey, this is real. They can actually do this. We found this hole. I mean, many times you read about independent researchers, coming out in the New York Times or in different outlets saying, "Oh, we found this hole in Bank of America's, you know, web banking system or in Microsoft's, procedure for upgrades, or uh, almost any organization, especially most importantly the MSSPs, right, who just hit so many organizations as a result of what they do, and what we've
Right.
seen in the last year."
So I'm gonna plug my ideas here. Risk assessment is giving a score to your business.
Right.
Say what are the and you want to rate it. So let's say you have a high risk of being penetrated. That's what you want to know.
Hmm.
And you want to know also what will be the impact. We didn't talk about the impact if you were to be breached, and we can have also discussion about the said. You're not, don't assume that when you will be, assume you are breached. Now now what's next? Okay.
Right.
But let's, this is another discussion. So as I said, risk assessment is giving a score to your, say, resilience to threats. As I see it, threat assessment is part of the risk assessment, because you won't be able to give any risk score without knowing what are my relevant threats.
Right. Which is
Okay.
why you use
So
ranking.
what are my relevant threats? So you can say, okay, I'm afraid of ransomware. You can ask the business, okay, what are my relevant threats? If somebody steals my data and use the data in a way that I didn't foresee, for instance, use the data to create other attacks against those people that I got the data, for instance, this is a threat. Or, for instance, a phishing email or social media that somebody can send me links
Mhm.
through the social media messenger, right? This is a threat
Yeah.
that somebody can get in and steal my data. So I did this purposely because when we talk about this, we not necessarily even ourselves understand very well what are they and how to take them and convey the messages to the business owners, because eventually they are, unlike us, we think about technology and we're thinking about those things, but they don't think like that.
Hmm.
They're business people. They think about other things, and we need to talk about the outcomes. What exactly am I looking? I have a big hole here that I'm trying to plug, or I'm trying, very small thing I'm trying to do here. What exactly is the outcome here? This is the conversation
Yeah.
that we need to have with
Yes.
business people.
Yeah. Obviously, when you at the end of your risk assessment, you sit down with the owner and you say, "Okay, we found these vulnerabilities, but okay, there's a whole host of those vulnerabilities might have very, very limited exploitability." Right? I mean, a lot of our um, decisions as information security officers resolve around whether the level of exploitability of the particular finding.
Not necessarily, because as a tech people, as you said now, as a security people, you see everything, almost any vulnerability as a big issue. While business people might say, I don't see so much a problem with this kind of vulnerability. I don't see it as a big threat.
Right.
However, I see something else that is going to be a big threat for us, and we need to handle it. Because in the end of the day, they are the information owners, and they need to make this kind of a decision. So, okay, that's good. That's good enough. We can continue talking about that.
Okay.
Okay, so to the viewers, thank you very much for watching us today. You're gonna watch us later. It's fine. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and if you don't like, it's fine. And comments, any comments in the section below. on the YouTube channel. This is Igal Beha, the Cybersecurity Insider, with Steve Magnani. I said your last name correctly, I hope.
Very good. Yes, excellent.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, guys. Thank you for watching. Thank you, Steve.
Thank
We'll
you.
see you next week. Probably we'll have another session. Hopefully, Seth will be able to join us. Maybe we'll have some broadcasting on a daily basis. We'll see how things. Finally, I was able to set up the studio here in a way that I can do it right away. So this is a big change for us, and hope to see you again. Thank you.
Thanks again, you gal.
Pleasure to have you here. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay. Thank you, guys.